And now we're here with the contentious get. Zodgrod Wortsnagga. Like I said before, Zodgrod Wortsnagga is not a Beastnagga boy. But in spirit, he is, because it's all over his body. It's tattooed on it, and he came with the kits back then. Therefore, he's in this video. So that's where I wanted to put him. Of course, he can actually gain benefits, like I'm saying here, where I mentioned he's much harder to kill than expected. So Zodgrod would enjoy the fact that you're going to use something like go to ground on him. He's probably the most valuable unit on go to ground in, possibly all of 40k, as giving the 4-up in the 6-up invuln, the cover for your runt herders that are in that unit actually makes a difference, because the unit is -1 to wound, which makes a difference for people's outputs. It will always catch enemy units by surprise on the amount of output they have to put into this. And I highly suggest that you experiment with simply its survivability and presence on the battlefield. Of course, it can punch above a weight class. It's funny enough how we mentioned it does have +1 hit, +1 to wound. People go, yeah, that's fine. You're just grots. But you're getting it to volumes of punches where it can actually become dangerous. Zodgrod himself being 5 attacks hitting on 2, strength 7, -2, +1 to wound, means he's actually more reliable to punch than war bosses outside of a WAAAGH turn. Simply because he can get +1 to wound built into his strength 7. And that's something that's just a matter of fact. Of course, he can also take advantage of stratagems, such as from Warhorde, where he can use Unbridled Carnage and use it on him because he's an orc. So it becomes silly. Of course, you can actually take advantage of what we spoke about earlier, which is the kill rig, where you can actually choose, this would be one of the units that you would choose, to reach out on the fight phase, give +1 strength, take the Grots to strength 2, take Zodgrod to strength 8. I'm sorry, take the Grots to strength 3, excuse me. Take Zodgrod to strength 8, and you can start breaking different thresholds with that +1 to wound to really enjoy the actual killing potential of Zodgrod Wortsnagga. Of course, his early game board presence is very important because he does have that now 9-inch scout. Just the profile and just the screening unit of that giant massive unit of 23 models is something that will always get the enemy's attention, and they will always have to respect wherever it ends up, as that's a massive OC, it's a massive screening, it's a mass of deep strike denial, it's a mass of strategic reserve denial, it's a mass of primary denial. It's outrageous. It can take up firing lanes, and it's really what you're supposed to use these guys for. So Zodgrod, once he scouts, a lot of the time some players that are new with Zod will simply scout forward into the middle of the battlefield. You see how big your unit is. When you deployed it, you simply threw it in the middle of the battle. That's what you don't want to do with that unit. A lot of the time, what you're using to do it is actually take them into a location where you can hide a lot of those guys, but still take advantage of most of their movement, whether that be in Dreadmob's reactionary movement or just simply your scouting plus your baseline movement, as you really want to take advantage of this unit on the WAAAGH turn. Reason that being is because Zod's secondary rule is special dose, where you can, on the WAAAGH, you add 6 to this movement characteristic. So Zod ends up being a really good home objective stealer. A lot of the time, people won't expect you to be able to get to their backfield and actually take up the field with Zodgrod Wortsnagga. Warhorde is tremendous for giving him speed in that in some ways, and Dreadmob, because his reactionary move makes it so he can reactionary move 12 inches, will make people go crazy. Today's sponsor, Baron of Dice. So Baron of Dice has great dice. They have actually enabled us to give these dice out for our paint competitions. So I greatly advise that you go out there. We have a link in the description for 5% discount. That's, of course, because nobody likes taxes. Shout out to the Baron of Dice, because they are actually customizing orc dice just for us that you guys will be able to get a hold of, and they look exceptional. So shout out to Baron of Dice. Really appreciate you guys, and I really do suggest you get them. I love the actual texture these dice have. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Of course, something that if you were not aware of, Zod can embark in a transport with a truck with the Grots. He can give that scout to the dedicated transport, meaning the truck will actually move 9 inches. Then Zod can get out and do his thing. I personally like to adhere to a bigger unit of Grots, but if that's what you want, go ahead and do that too. It's pretty awesome. He is worthy of CP invested when the time comes, and he does punch above his weight class. Zodgrod has many ways to play, and he is just actually quite viable in especially the Warhorde or Dread Mob detachments. It's just up to you as the Orc player to understand that the strength in him is actually how much of the board he can control and how much of the enemy units he can touch when they don't want to actually be touched or simply stand in front of. You know, you don't really have to charge everything with a unit when this scout, you know, this scouting grot unit can actually position itself really good into the enemy home deployment zone. Of course, you really could use this to also screen yourself as an Orc player, as we don't want to be alpha striked in melee either. We don't want to be alpha striked in general, but we don't want when someone can actually get the initiative on him, whether it's a brick of Gene Stealers with a Brood Lord, whether it's a unit of 8-bound. Zodgrod is one of those units that, of course, he might not survive that encounter, but they can actually take up all of an enemy's first turn melee charge in that maybe mirror matchup of Orcs or other melee units, and end up getting good value in just that simple trade of how much his points are versus how much grots are, comparisons to what somebody's missile first alpha strike unit might be. And like I said, with his durability, a lot of time it can catch them off guard that Zod and his unit actually survived it. So give it a try. Zod is one of those units that is always spoken about. He was all over the place for like $5 on eBay. You know, so if you can get your hands on one, I recommend you do, and you actually start giving them a run, because even though he does lack the Beastnagga keyword to maybe go in conjunction with some of their abilities, he does still enjoy the fact that he can hang out with Beastnagga units, support them in melee, and support them in battlefield presence and control and OC. If you enjoyed the clip, check out the full video here. If you'd like to see more tactics, click here.
Let's get stuck in, lads!